The moment you feel relief looking at your minimum payment. That's the moment the credit card is working exactly as designed, just not for you. Luke was standing in the checkout line at a grocery store in Atlanta when he realized something was wrong. Not wrong like he'd forgotten the milk. Wrong like he'd been living inside a magic trick and had just, for the first time, spotted the trapdoor. He was holding his credit card over the reader. The total was $147. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a number surfaced, $6,200. That was the balance sitting on this card. The balance he'd been paying the minimum on for 11 months. The balance that had barely moved. He tapped the card anyway. The machine beeped. A cheerful little animation played. A green check mark. Approved. And Luke thought, approved for what exactly? Here's what Luke, and most people, never stop to think about. A credit card is not a payment tool. Not really. It's a revolving line of credit dressed up to look like a payment tool. The difference sounds technical. It isn't. It changes everything. When you pay with cash, the transaction is over. When you pay with a debit card, the money leaves your bank account within seconds. But when you tap that credit card, the one with the rewards points and the sleek metal finish and the little hologram, you're not paying for anything. You're borrowing. You're making a promise. You're taking out a tiny, frictionless loan at the exact moment you feel least like you're doing any such thing. The genius and the danger is that it doesn't feel like borrowing. It feels like spending. And that distinction is worth about $6,200 to Luke right now. Luke got his card at a car dealership forecourt 4 years ago. A rep in a navy polo shirt slid the application across a clipboard and said the words that close more credit card accounts than any television ad ever has. No annual fee and 2% back on everything. Luke had signed in the little box and walked away feeling like he'd found something, like he'd unlocked a level most people didn't know existed. There are currently 543 million credit cards in circulation in the United States alone. That's more cards than there are adults in the country. Every single one of them was sold to someone who felt, in that moment, like they'd won. And every single one of them has a trapdoor. The question is whether you know where it is and what triggers it. When Luke tapped his card at the grocery store, he thought one transaction happened. In reality, at least 4 parties were involved, and only one of them was Luke. First, the issuing bank, the institution that gave Luke the card and is now technically paying the grocery store on behalf of Luke. Second, the payment network. Visa, MasterCard, Amex, they're not the bank. They're the highway the transaction travels on. Third, the merchant acquirer, the company that allows the grocery store to accept cards in the first place. Fourth, the merchant, the grocery store itself, which doesn't actually receive $147. It receives $147 minus an interchange fee, percentage sliced off the top by the network and the bank before the store sees a penny. Every time Luke swipes his card, the store quietly pays for the privilege of his convenience. And here's the part that should make you stop mid-swipe. Those interchange fees are also what fund the rewards points that make Luke want to use the card in the first place. Luke's 2% cashback isn't coming from the bank's goodwill. It's coming from the grocery store's margin, which ultimately means it's coming from every consumer who shops there, card or no card. The level he thought he'd unlocked? Everyone else is paying for it. Now here is the part that almost nobody talks about, and it has to do with why your interest rate is almost certainly much higher than it needs to be, for reasons that have nothing to do with how risky a borrower you are. The default rate on credit card accounts, the percentage of borrowers who simply stop paying, hovers around 5%. That's high. Genuinely high compared to other forms of lending. You'd expect that number to explain why credit card interest rates are so high. But it doesn't. Not even close. Analysis of 330 million monthly credit card accounts, representing roughly 90% of the entire U.S. market, found that default risk explains only a small part of the interest rates consumers actually pay. The rest? Marketing. Rewards programs. Marketing alone accounts for a larger share of what you pay in interest than the actual risk of you not paying it back. Here is something I find genuinely strange, and I think you will too. In the United States, the average credit card rewards program is far more generous than anything you'd find in Europe. Not because American banks are kinder. Because in Europe, interchange fees, the money stream that funds your cash back, are capped by law. Remove that income, and the rewards disappear, which means your 2% cash back is not a gift. It is a cut of what is taken from every shop, and every shopper, every time a card is used anywhere in the economy. The more generous your rewards, the more the whole system is taking from everyone else to pay for them. Credit card companies spend more on marketing than almost any other financial product out there. Those sign-up bonuses, those special offers, those 0% rates for the first year, they're not being kind. They're making a bet. The industry knows that once you're in, the habits take over. The minimum payment becomes the easy choice. The balance stays. The interest builds. Luke remembered, vaguely, getting a letter about his rate going up 18 months ago. He'd put it on the kitchen counter, then under a magazine. Then it was gone. Luke's interest rate isn't high because he's a bad borrower. It's high because getting him through the door was expensive. And someone has to pay for it. Which raises a question most people never think to ask. If your rate wasn't set based on your risk, can you get it lowered? The answer, for most people, is yes. But first you need to know which type of cardholder you are. Because the industry already has a name for you, even if you don't know it yet. Not all credit card users are the same. The industry has a quiet name for the two types. Transactors pay their balance in full every month. They use the card for the ease of it, collect whatever rewards they earn, and pay zero interest. From the bank's point of view, they're almost not worth having, but their spending brings in interchange fees. So the bank keeps them around. Revolvers carry a balance from month to month. They pay interest. They are, simply put, the business model. Most people who become revolvers never decided to. It just happened. Luke is a revolver. In his wallet, behind the Navy card, there was a second one. A department store card he'd opened on Black Friday 3 years ago to get 20% off a coat. He'd used it once. It was still there, quietly charging an interest rate 6 points higher than anything else in his name. For a card he could only use in one shop. He became a revolver slowly, the way most people do. Not through one big bad decision, but through a string of small, sensible ones. The car repair in March. The flights for his sister's wedding in June. The laptop in September when his old one finally gave out. Each one made sense at the time. Each one rolled into the next month's minimum payment. The data shows that people earning under $10,000 a year are far more likely to be revolvers, which creates a hard truth. The people who can least afford high-interest debt are the ones most likely to be carrying it. An unexpected cost that would be a small problem for someone earning more is actually, for someone earning less, the start of something much harder to get out of. The discount you got today, the interest will eat it. Quietly, over months. While you forget you even signed up, knowing which type you are is the start. But there is one rule, one single rule, that decides whether a credit card works for you or against you. And almost everyone who knows it still doesn't follow it. Here's why that is, and what actually changes it. Before the rule, and on a side note, if you are getting value from this video, kindly hit the like button as it will help get the video in front of people who need it. And subscribe if you want more valuable videos like this one. Financial advisors across decades and across the world keep landing on the same answer. Pay the balance in full, every month, without exception. When you do this, a credit card is a zero-interest monthly loan. It's 30 days of free borrowing, plus whatever rewards you collect, plus cover against fraud, plus rights that cash purchases don't give you. Used this way, it's a genuinely useful tool. When you don't, when you carry even a small balance into the next month, the card becomes something completely different. And that is one of the most expensive ways to borrow money that most people will ever use. The free period disappears. Interest builds on your average daily balance. The minimum payment is set up to keep you paying for as long as mathematically possible. Same card. Completely different product. Which one it is depends on a choice you make once a month. Usually late at night when the bill lands and you're tired and you just want it to stop. Luke knew this rule. He'd read it somewhere years ago. He'd agreed with it. The way you agree with advice about sleep or vegetables. He just hadn't done it. And the gap between knowing something and actually doing it had cost him $860 in interest alone. Paying in full is not about having more self-control. It is about having a better system. The people who pay in full every month are not stronger than the people who don't. They've usually just done one thing, set up an automatic full payment, and taken the choice out of the equation entirely. The rule doesn't need to survive a tired Tuesday night. It needs to run on its own before you're ever in that position. That is the difference between knowing the rule and living by it. Luke knew it. He just never set it up to run without him. And the trapdoor opened every month while he looked the other way. He stood there for a moment longer than he needed to. The person behind him shifted. The cashier looked up. Luke looked at the card in his hand. The navy one, with the little contactless symbol and the 4 raised digits he'd long since memorized, and felt, for the first time in 4 years, the full weight of what it actually was. Not money. A promise. His own promise. Made in a car dealership forecourt to an institution that had been quietly collecting on it ever since. The trapdoor had been there the whole time. He just hadn't known he was standing on it. He put the card back in his wallet, opened his banking app, and paid from his debit card. $147 gone instantly. Transaction complete. No outstanding promise. No interest building overnight while he slept. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't fix the $6,200. But it was the first decision he'd made about this card with his eyes fully open, and the last time he would make it by hand. That evening, he set up the automatic full payment. 30 seconds. Done. The green checkmark on the reader wasn't approval. It was an invitation, whether you accept it or not, and on whose terms. That's the decision the card never asks out loud. Check out the next video on your screen right now. Watch it next. It carries on from exactly where this one left off. I'm Billy, and I probably spend too much time thinking about why the most expensive financial decisions most people ever make are also the ones that felt, in the moment, like a small win. If that just landed somewhere familiar, subscribe, because that's exactly what we do here.